The heavy crystal tumbler strikes the marble floor and shatters, but the sound is lost in the ringing of Xavier's ears. "You are worthless," the woman sneers, her diamonds flashing under the soft lights. "People like you exist only to serve people like me." Xavier Vance, her apron stained with expensive wine, stands trembling, not from fear, but from a lifetime of suppressed rage. She is just a waitress, and this woman is her nightmare. But neither of them knows the man walking out of the private office, the one man who owns the building, the business, and a secret that will destroy one of them completely. The scent of truffle oil, seared scallops, and old money clung to the velvet curtains of Aurelia. It was a scent Xavier Vance knew better than the lavender soap in her own cramped apartment. For 2 years, Aurelia had been her stage, her sanctuary, and her prison. The restaurant was a gleaming gem in the city's financial district, a place where multi-million-dollar deals were sealed over $500 bottles of wine, and where the staff moved with the silent, synchronized grace of a ballet. Xavier was, by nature, not a graceful person. She was practical, sharp-witted, and carried a quiet exhaustion that settled deep in her bones. At 24, she was the sole provider for her younger sister Lily, who was facing a third, astronomically expensive surgery on her knee, a cruel souvenir from a hit-and-run driver who had never been caught. The tips Xavier earned at Aurelia, combined with the paycheck she received for her other job tutoring college students in calculus, were the only things keeping their small boat from sinking. She navigated the dinner rush, her silver tray held high. "Table 4 needs water, Chloe. Kitchen, fire 2 fillets, medium rare." "Table 7, she called, her voice clear but low, never rising to an inappropriate volume. Mr. Henderson, the restaurant's manager, nodded in approval as she passed. He was a man carved from granite, with eyes that missed nothing. He was intensely private, reporting only to the restaurant's mysterious owner, a Mr. C whom Xavier had never seen. The staff whispered he was an old-money recluse, perhaps even European royalty. All Xavier knew was that his standards were impossibly high, but his pay was, thankfully, commensurate. "Xavier, you're taking the corner booth," Henderson said, his voice clipped. "The Covingtons just arrived." A small groan escaped Chloe, the restaurant's newest hostess, who was already struggling with the reservation system. Serafina Covington, seriously, on a Tuesday. Xavier felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach. Just her, or her and her usual flock, Henderson said, adjusting his tie. "See to it they want for nothing. Mrs. Covington is particular." Particular was a kindness. Serafina Covington was a predator in bespoke clothing. She was the queen bee of the city's old money socialites, a woman who seemed to derive her life's breath from the discomfort of those she deemed beneath her. She was infamous in the service industry, a name whispered like a curse. "Good luck," Chloe muttered, adjusting the strap of her dress. Chloe was all sharp angles and sharper ambition. She resented Xavier, sensing that despite Xavier's worn-out shoes, she possessed a quiet dignity that Chloe, with all her flashy attempts, couldn't replicate. Chloe often forgot to input Xavier's orders or, accidentally, double-booked her tables, small acts of sabotage that made Xavier's difficult job even harder. Xavier just nodded, straightening her spine. She checked her apron for stains and pulled her dark hair back into its severe, professional bun. It didn't matter if the woman was a viper. She was a customer, and Lily's surgery was in 3 weeks. Xavier smoothed the front of her uniform, took a deep breath, and prepared for battle. She approached the table, where 3 women sat, their laughter brittle and loud. Serafina Covington was center stage, draped in a Chanel jacket that probably cost more than Xavier's car. A massive canary yellow diamond sat on her left hand, and her face was a smooth, immobile mask of expensive treatments. She was gesturing dismissively with a menu, her voice cutting through the restaurant's polite hum. And of course, the orchestra was simply dreadful. I told the conductor myself, "Your violin section sounds like a bag of dying cats." He didn't appreciate my honesty, naturally. Her friends tittered. Xavier waited a polite 3 seconds before stepping forward. "Good evening, ladies. Welcome to Aurelia. My name is Xavier, and I will be your server tonight. May I start you with some water, or perhaps a cocktail?" Serafina didn't even look up. She continued her story for another 30 seconds, letting Xavier stand there, invisible, a silent statue holding a silver tray. Xavier held her pose, her expression placid, though her knuckles were white on the tray's rim. Finally, Serafina finished her anecdote and turned her gaze on Xavier. It wasn't a glance. It was an assessment, the way one might inspect a piece of fish at the market. Water. Sparkling. From Italy. Not that dreadful domestic garbage. And bring the wine list, the real one, not the list of cheap blends you give to the tourists. "Of course, ma'am," Xavier said, her voice perfectly even. As she turned to leave, she heard Serafina mutter to her friends, loud enough to carry, "They really are scraping the bottom of the barrel for help these days, aren't they?" Xavier's jaw tightened. She walked back to the service station, her steps measured, betraying none of the fury that had just flared in her chest. This was going to be a long night. The first hour was a masterclass in passive aggression. Serafina Covington didn't just order. She held court. Xavier returned with the water. "Pellegrino, ma'am." Serafina inspected the bottle as if it might be counterfeit. "Fine. And I suppose I'll have the 98 Chateau Margaux, if you can find it. And do try not to drop it." "An excellent choice," Xavier said, maintaining her professional mask. She retrieved the wine from the cellar, presented the bottle, and performed the ritual of opening and offering the cork. Serafina waved the cork away. "Just pour it, girl. I'm not here for a lesson." Xavier poured the small tasting amount. Serafina swirled the deep red liquid, sniffed it with exaggerated theatricality, and took a tiny bird-like sip. Her face immediately soured, twisting into a mask of profound disgust. "Ugh, it's corked," she snapped, pushing the glass away. Xavier paused. She was a certified sommelier, a fact she kept off her Aurelia resume, as Mr. Henderson preferred his staff not to outshine the clientele. She knew, from the smell of the cork and the aroma in the glass, that the wine was perfect. It was under $200 a bottle of wine. "Ma'am, I can assure you, are you arguing with me?" Serafina's voice rose, silencing her friends. "I said it's corked. It tastes like wet newspaper. Are you deaf as well as incompetent? Take it away and bring me a different bottle." Xavier knew the protocol. The customer was always right, even when they were demonstrably, aggressively wrong. To argue would be to lose her job. To open another $1,200 bottle, only to have it rejected again, would also risk her job. She spotted Chloe watching from across the room, a tiny, satisfied smirk on her face. Chloe had been the one to fetch the bottle from the cellar rack, handing it to Xavier with a saccharine. "Here you go." Xavier suddenly wondered if the bottle had been stored improperly, perhaps by Chloe herself, though it was impossible to prove. "My apologies, ma'am," Xavier said, her voice tight. "I will bring another bottle immediately." She returned to the cellar, her heart pounding with frustration. The cost of that wine would be more than her paycheck. Mr. Henderson would be furious. She located the second bottle, her hands shaking slightly. When she returned, the conversation at the table had turned to Serafina's upcoming charity gala. Of course, it's raising money for the homeless, or the children, or something. But the real point is the guest list. If you're not there, you're simply nobody. Xavier performed the ritual again. This time, Serafina barely sniffed the wine before nodding. This one is acceptable, I suppose. Xavier poured the wine for the table and took their food orders. Serafina made a production of it, demanding substitutions that were culinary absurdities. I want the lobster tail, but I want it prepared like the short rib, and your risotto is famously bland. Tell the chef to actually use real saffron, not that yellow powder. The chef will do his best to accommodate you, ma'am, Xavier said, her smile feeling brittle. As she walked away, Chloe intercepted her at the service station. Having fun? Chloe whispered, her eyes gleaming. Just inputting the order, Chloe. She's a piece of work, huh? You know, Mr. Henderson hates it when a customer sends back a Premier bottle. It comes out of the restaurant's margins. He really hates that. Xavier just looked at her. Do you have a point? Chloe's smile widened. Just saying. 2 mistakes and you're out, and that was a big mistake. Maybe you're not cut out for high-end service, Xavier. Maybe you should try the diner down the street. Before Xavier could respond, the bell for table 9 dinged. She ignored Chloe and went back to work, the acid of injustice burning in her throat. She spent the next hour running food, refilling drinks, and enduring the silent treatment from Serafina's table, broken only by a snapped-finger summons for more bread. Xavier was clearing their appetizer plates when Serafina's friend, a thin woman named Beatrice, leaned in conspiratorially. Serafina, darling, isn't that your Marcus's car? That new Rolls-Royce Wraith? Serafina, who had been scrolling through her phone, looked up sharply. She glanced out the floor-to-ceiling window toward the valet stand. A sleek, midnight blue Rolls-Royce was pulling up. He didn't tell me he was coming here, Serafina said, her voice suddenly losing its bored affectation. There was a flicker of something new. Insecurity. Maybe he's surprising you, Beatrice chirped. Marcus doesn't do surprises, Serafina muttered, her eyes narrowing as she watched the valet open the door. Xavier, forgotten for a moment, continued clearing plates, her curiosity piqued. She'd heard of Marcus Covington, of course. He was a titan of industry, a man who had built a logistics empire from nothing. He was intensely private, a stark contrast to his publicity-hungry wife. He's probably meeting with someone in the private dining room, Serafina said, regaining her composure and taking a sip of wine. He's always working. She waved a dismissive hand at Xavier. We're ready for our entrees. Do try to get them here before they turn to stone. Right away, ma'am. Xavier retreated to the kitchen, a strange tension settling over the dining room. Serafina's attention was no longer on her friends or her food. It was fixed on the restaurant's entrance. The entrees arrived. Xavier served them with practiced precision, placing each dish from the left. This is what I ordered? Serafina said, staring at the lobster. Yes, ma'am. The lobster tail, with the short rib demi-glace reduction, as you requested. Serafina poked it with her fork. It looks disgusting. It was prepared exactly to your specifications, ma'am, Xavier said, her patience stretched to a microscopic thread. My specifications? Serafina's voice rose, attracting the attention of the surrounding tables. My specification was that it be edible. This looks like a car accident on a plate. And you? She suddenly rounded on Xavier, her eyes glittering with malice. You've had an attitude all night. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Ma'am, I have only been respectful, Xavier said, her voice low. Respectful? Serafina let out a short, barking laugh. You've been hovering, staring, and frankly, your presence is upsetting my digestion. I come here for an experience, not to be waited on by someone who clearly rolled out of a gutter. Xavier flinched, The insult was so blunt, so cruel, it knocked the breath out of her. She could feel the stares of the other diners. She saw Mr. Henderson start to move from the podium, his face a storm cloud. "Ma'am, that is entirely inappropriate," Xavier said, her voice shaking slightly but firm. "Inappropriate?" Serafina's face darkened. "I'll tell you what's inappropriate. It's a woman of your background questioning a customer. You are a servant. Nothing more. You are paid to smile, pour wine, and disappear. You are not paid to speak. You are not paid to think." Each word was a hammer blow. Xavier thought of Lily's medical chart. She thought of the double shifts, the missed meals, the exhaustion so profound she sometimes fell asleep on the subway. And she looked at this woman, who had everything, treating her as if she weren't human. "I am a person, Mrs. Covington," Xavier said, her voice dangerously quiet, "and I will not be spoken to this way." This was a catastrophic breach of protocol. Xavier knew it. Henderson was now moving faster, but Serafina had pushed her too far. Serafina looked utterly scandalized. Her friends gasped. No one ever talked back to Serafina Covington. "You... what?" she sputtered. "You dare? You filthy little..." Serafina's hand shot out. She didn't slap Xavier. She did something worse. She picked up her full glass of $1,200 at Chateau Margaux and, with a flick of her wrist, dashed its contents all over the front of Xavier's white apron and blouse. The dark red wine soaked her instantly, cold and stinging. The entire restaurant, which had been at a low hum, went dead silent. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip of wine onto the plush carpet. Xavier stood, frozen, dripping in humiliation. Chloe, from the service station, was watching with wide, horrified eyes. This had gone beyond petty rivalry into genuine brutality. Serafina sat back, breathing hard, a triumphant, cruel smile on her face. "There. Now you match the trash you are. Get out of my sight." She then looked past Xavier and yelled, "Manager, get over here! I want this thing fired. Now!" Mr. Henderson arrived at the table, his face pale with fury. "Mrs. Covington, that is quite enough." "Enough?" Serafina shrieked. "It's not enough until she is on the street. I will not spend another dollar in this establishment if you employ this kind of riffraff. She insulted me. She argued with me. Fire her, or I will personally see to it that every person I know, which is everyone, blacklists this restaurant forever." "Mrs. Covington, you assaulted my staff," Henderson said, his voice trembling with rage. She assaulted me with her incompetence." Xavier just stood there, the wine dripping from her hair. She felt a strange, cold calm settle over her. She had lost. She had let her anger show, and this woman had won. She had lost her job, Lily's surgery. How would she pay for it now? "Ma'am," Xavier said, her voice devoid of all emotion, "you have ruined my uniform. You have humiliated me. And you have done it for no reason other than your own pleasure. You are a miserable human being." "Fire her!" Serafina screamed, pointing a diamond-encrusted finger. "Fire her, or I'll buy this pathetic restaurant myself just to have the pleasure of doing it." "That," a new voice said, cutting through the tension like a razor, "will not be necessary." The voice was deep, quiet, and radiated an authority that silenced even Serafina. It came from the hallway that led to the private dining rooms. Xavier turned. Mr. Henderson turned. Serafina's friends turned. Serafina froze. Standing there was the man Xavier had seen exit the Rolls-Royce. He was tall, in his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair and a face that looked like it belonged on currency. He wore a perfectly tailored Armani suit, but his eyes were not the eyes of a soft executive. They were hard, calculating, and currently fixed on his wife. "Marcus," Serafina breathed, her face instantly draining of color. "Darling, what are you doing here?" Marcus Covington didn't look at his wife. His gaze swept over the scene, taking in the shattered glass on the floor that Xavier hadn't even registered, the stunned faces of the other diners, the dark red stain spreading across Xavier's chest, and the triumphant, ugly look on Serafina's face. "Marcus, thank goodness," Serafina said, recovering, a smug smile returning. She clearly believed her husband had arrived as her cavalry. "This waitress has been absolutely horrid. She argued with me, she insulted me, and she spilled wine all over herself, utterly incompetent. I was just telling the manager he needs to fire her immediately." Marcus Covington took 2 slow steps toward the table. Xavier watched him, her heart hammering. This was it, the final nail in her coffin. The woman's powerful husband had arrived to finish the execution. She braced herself. Mr. Henderson, however, did something strange. He straightened up and inclined his head slightly, almost like a soldier greeting a superior officer. "Mr. C," he said, his voice full of relief. "You're here." "Mr. C?" Xavier's blood ran cold. Serafina's smile faltered. She looked at Henderson, then at her husband. "Mr. C? What is he talking about, Marcus? Don't tell me you know these people." Marcus Covington finally looked at his wife. His expression was one Xavier had never seen on another human being, a glacial contempt so profound it was almost chilling. "Serafina," he said, his voice dangerously soft, "you are making a scene." "I am not making a scene," she hissed. "I am handling a problem. Fire her." "I can't fire her, Serafina." "What do you mean you can't? You're Marcus Covington. Tell the manager." "I don't need to tell the manager," Marcus said, his eyes never leaving his wife's face. "Because I am the owner. This is my restaurant." The silence in Aurelia was no longer just silence. It was a vacuum. Xavier stopped breathing. Serafina's friends, Beatrice and Anne, looked like they had been turned to stone. Serafina's face, which had been flushed with rage, went the color of bleached parchment. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. This was the owner, not some European recluse. It was Serafina Covington's own husband. Your restaurant?" Serafina finally whispered. You own this? This little..." She trailed off, realizing she had just spent an hour insulting every aspect of her own husband's establishment. "I have owned Aurelia for 5 years, Marcus said, his voice flat. "It's one of my quieter investments. I come here often. I use the private office." He gestured to the hallway. "I was in a meeting, which your screaming interrupted." Serafina was frozen. This was the first shock. She had just spent an hour behaving like a barbarian in her husband's private business, in front of his staff. The humiliation was total. But she was a fighter. Xavier watched her mind work, watched her try to spin the narrative. Well, good," Serafina said, attempting a laugh that came out as a squeak. "Then you can finally do something about the service. Marcus, darling, this girl," she pointed a trembling finger at Xavier, "was a nightmare. She ruined a $1,200 bottle of Margot. I heard everything, Serafina," Marcus cut in. His voice was final. "From the moment you arrived." You heard?" "My office has a live audio feed of the main dining room. Security. Quality control." He looked at Xavier, his expression unreadable. "I heard you send back a perfect bottle of wine. I heard you call her gutter trash. I heard you demand she be fired. And I saw, with my own eyes," he gestured to a small, tinted security dome in the ceiling, "you throw a $200 glass of wine in her face." Serafina had nothing. She was cornered, exposed and humiliated. "Marcus, she provoked me." "She did her job," Marcus said. He then turned to Mr. Henderson. "Henderson, is she a good employee?" Mr. Henderson, who had been watching this with grim satisfaction, didn't hesitate. "Miss Vance is the best server I have, sir. She is professional, brilliant, and has never had a single customer complaint. Not one. Until tonight." Marcus nodded, as if this confirmed something he already knew. He turned back to Serafina. "So, no," Marcus said. "I will not be firing Miss Vance. But you, Serafina, you will be leaving." You're kicking me out?" she shrieked, all pretense of composure gone. "In front of my friends, in front of everyone. I am your wife." "You are a liability," Marcus said, his voice like ice. "You are a cruel, petty bully, and you have just assaulted a member of my staff. Henderson, please bring Miss Vance a clean uniform and a towel, and send the bill for the wine, the ruined clothing, and the dry cleaning to my wife's personal account." Your personal account?" Serafina sputtered. "We share accounts, you fool." "Not anymore," Marcus said simply. "As of this morning, all joint accounts are frozen. My lawyers filed for divorce at 9 a.m. I believe the papers were served at the house an hour ago. You just haven't been home to see them." The shattered glass on the floor was nothing compared to the shattering of Serafina Covington. Her friends, Beatrice and Anne, were already grabbing their purses, their faces aghast, desperate to distance themselves from the implosion. This wasn't just a freeze, this was a cataclysm. Serafina Covington, the queen of the social scene, had just been publicly fired, dethroned, and divorced by her billionaire husband, in his restaurant, in front of everyone. She stared at him, her face a mask of utter, uncomprehending horror. But Marcus wasn't finished. He wasn't even looking at her anymore. He turned his full attention to Xavier, who was standing there, soaked, stunned, and confused by the sheer velocity of the drama. Marcus's hard expression softened. The change was so profound it was startling. He looked at her, not as an owner to an employee, but as something else. "Miss Vance?" he said, his voice gentle. "Are you all right?" Xavier could only nod, mute. "Marcus, what is this?" Serafina screamed, finding her voice again. "Why are you looking at her like that? What is going on? She's a nobody, a waitress." Marcus Covington closed his eyes for a brief second, as if gathering his strength. When he opened them, he looked directly at Serafina. "She is not a nobody, Serafina," he said, his voice clear and carrying in the dead, silent room. "I will not have you speak about my daughter that way." If the previous silence had been a vacuum, this one was the cold, airless void of space. Xavier's knees buckled. She grabbed the edge of a nearby table to steady herself. You're... what?" Serafina let out a sound that was half laugh, half strangled sob. "Her daughter? Have you gone insane, Marcus? You don't have a daughter. We have no children." "That's not true, Serafina," Marcus said, his voice filled with a sudden, deep sadness. He never took his eyes off Xavier, who was staring at him, her mind reeling, trying to make sense of the words. "I have a daughter," Marcus continued, speaking to Xavier now, not to his wife. "Her name is Xavier Vance. Her mother was a woman named Amelia Vance." Xavier's breath hitched. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years. My mother," Xavier whispered, the wine stain forgotten. How do you know my mother's name?" "Because I loved her," Marcus said simply. The admission hung in the air, raw and vulnerable. "We were together, a lifetime ago. Before all this." He gestured at the restaurant, the suits, the wealth. "I was a young man, working on the docks, trying to get my first logistics contract. She was a painter. We were happy." He paused, a flicker of old pain crossing his face. "But I was ambitious. I was foolish. I got a major contract, one that required me to move overseas for a year. I asked her to come. She refused. She didn't want the life I was chasing. She wanted a simple life, a life of art. I left. I told her I'd be back. By the time I returned, she was gone. Vanished. I assumed she hated me. I buried myself in my work, built my empire, and I met Serafina." He finally glanced at his wife, who was watching this, her face a grotesque mask of confusion and fury. A marriage of convenience, a business arrangement. She wanted the status, I wanted a hostess. You liar!" Serafina shrieked. "You're making this up. You're trying to humiliate me." "I am finished humiliating you, Serafina," Marcus said. "I'm telling the truth. 8 months ago, my lawyers located a box of my old effects from a storage unit I'd forgotten. In it was a stack of letters. Letters from Amelia. Letters I had never seen." He looked back at Xavier, his eyes pleading for her to understand. "They were sent to my old London address after I had already moved to Asia. They were returned to her again and again. In the last one, she told me she was pregnant, that she was going to have a child, that she was going to name her Xavier, after the constellation she loved." Xavier's hand flew to her mouth. Her mother, who had died of cancer when Xavier was 16, had always pointed to the Xavier constellation. "That's you, my little star. You're my bright, distant light." I don't understand," Xavier stammered, tears welling in her eyes, mixing with the wine. "My mother. She was proud," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion, "and I had abandoned her. Why would she tell you about the man who broke her heart? For the last 8 months, I've had every private investigator on my payroll searching for you. They found you 3 months ago, working here." The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity, her being hired instantly by Mr. Henderson, despite other, more experienced candidates. The way Henderson always gave her the best shifts, the ones with the highest tipping customers. The way he deflected complaints from jealous staff like Chloe. You knew?" Xavier looked at Mr. Henderson. The granite-faced manager nodded, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Mr. Covington, hired me 2 months ago. My primary job was not to manage Aurelia. It was to watch over you, to make sure you were safe." "I wanted to know you," Marcus said, taking a step closer, but stopping, afraid to spook her. "I didn't want to just show up and disrupt your life with this bomb. I wanted to see what kind of person you were. If you were like her." He smiled, a sad, watery smile. "And you are. You're strong. You're dignified. You have her eyes, and you have her fire. I watched you on that camera tonight, Xavier. You took abuse that no person should ever endure, all to protect your job. You did it to pay for your sister's surgery." Xavier was openly crying now. "You know about Lily?" "I know everything," Marcus said gently. "Lily's surgery is already paid for. It was paid for a week ago by an anonymous hospital donor. I was trying to find the right time to tell you. Tonight was not the plan." This is a joke," Serafina whispered, her voice hollow. She looked around at the faces staring at her. Her friends were gone. The restaurant was a gallery of her shame. "This is a sick, twisted joke." "It's the truth," Marcus said. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a worn, folded photograph. He held it out to Xavier. Xavier, trembling, took it. It was her mother, Amelia Vance, younger than Xavier had ever known her, vibrant and smiling, her arms around a young, dark-haired man in a simple t-shirt, the man who was now Marcus Covington. The proof was undeniable. The world tilted on its axis. The woman who had just called her gutter trash was the wife of her father. The man who owned this temple of wealth was her father. Seraphina Covington finally, truly, broke. She let out a wail, a sound of such profound loss and rage that it was animalistic. She had not just been divorced, she had been replaced. Her entire life, her status, her money, her identity, all of it was being transferred in one blinding moment to the waitress she had just tried to destroy. She slumped into her chair, her canary diamond ring, a gift from Marcus, feeling like a shackle. She was frozen, a statue of her own arrogance, shattered from the inside out. The tableau held for a long, agonizing moment. Xavier, clutching the photograph, weeping silently. Marcus, watching his daughter with 24 years of lost time in his eyes. And Seraphina, a hollowed-out shell of a woman, staring blankly at the ruined lobster on her plate. Mr. Henderson was the first to move. He stepped forward and spoke quietly into his lapel microphone. Security to the main dining room, front entrance. Then he turned to the still gaping diners. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice regaining its command. "My apologies for the interruption to your evening. On behalf of Aurelia and Mr. Covington, all meals tonight are, of course, on the house. Please, finish your dinners. Our staff will be with you shortly." The spell was broken. A low murmur erupted. Some people began to eat, others whispered furiously, their phones discreetly angled toward the drama. Chloe, the rival waitress, was hiding near the service station, her face as white as a napkin. She had witnessed Xavier's utter humiliation, followed by her sudden elevation to heiress. Chloe's own petty acts of sabotage suddenly seemed like crimes that could land her in prison. She vanished into the kitchen. Two discreet but imposing men in black suits entered the restaurant. They moved silently to Seraphina's table. "Mrs. Covington," one of them said softly, "we've been asked to escort you out." Seraphina didn't seem to hear. She was rocking slightly, muttering, "No, no, no, it's not. It's not possible. He can't." "Ma'am," the guard said, a little firmer. Seraphina's head snapped up. She saw the guards. She saw Henderson. She saw Marcus, who was now standing near Xavier, as if to shield her. Her frozen despair cracked, revealing a bedrock of pure, unadulterated rage. "Get your hands off me!" she shrieked, batting the guard's arm away. "You can't touch me. Do you know who I am?" "We do, ma'am," the guard said, his face impassive. "And we have our orders. Please come quietly." "Quietly? Quietly?" She stood up, knocking her chair over. She pointed a shaking finger at Marcus. You bastard! You planned this! You brought me here to humiliate me! You and her!" She lunged, not at Marcus, but at Xavier. It was a clumsy, desperate attack, but Marcus and the guards were faster. One guard stepped in front of Xavier, blocking her, while Marcus caught his wife's wrists. "Seraphina, stop it!" Marcus yelled, his voice echoing with genuine anger for the first time. "It's over! You've lost!" "I haven't lost anything!" she screamed, struggling against him, her Chanel jacket tearing at the seam. "I made you! You were just a rough-edged brute before I polished you, before I taught you which fork to use. I hosted your parties. I built your reputation. You owe me." "I owed you loyalty, Seraphina," Marcus said, his voice cold and tired, his grip like steel on her arms. "And you paid it back with cruelty to everyone but me. I've been watching you for years. I've paid your settlements to hotel staff, to drivers, to shop assistants you've abused. I am done cleaning up your messes. And I am done letting you hurt people." He nodded to the guards. "Get her out, now." The guards took her firmly by the arms. The fight went out of her instantly, replaced by a terrible, dawning realization of her powerlessness. She was no longer Mrs. Covington. She was just a woman being thrown out of a restaurant. "My bag!" she whimpered, seeing her prized Hermes Birkin bag sitting on the chair. My things." Mr. Henderson picked it up, holding it by the strap as if it were contaminated. He handed it to her. Seraphina Covington, the queen of the city, was marched through the dining room of Aurelia, past all the people who had once courted her, her face blotchy, her hair a mess, her expensive jacket torn. She didn't look back. The heavy glass doors closed behind her, and she was gone, disappearing into the flash of a single, waiting paparazzi camera. Someone, no doubt, from a gossip site she had once had on speed dial. The restaurant was quiet again. Marcus let out a long, heavy breath. He turned to Xavier, his face etched with exhaustion and apology. "Xavier, I am so sorry. This is the last way I ever wanted this to happen." Xavier just stared at him. She was holding a 25-year-old photograph in one hand and her wine-soaked apron in the other. Her world had been dismantled and reassembled in the span of 10 minutes. You paid for Lily's surgery," she said, her voice numb. "Yes, of course. She's my family. You're my family. I need to sit down," Xavier whispered, the adrenaline finally leaving her. "Of course," Marcus said instantly. "Henderson, my office. Now." He put a hand gently on her back, the first time he had ever touched her. It was hesitant, fearful she might pull away. Xavier didn't. She was too numb to move. "Xavier," he said, his voice thick. "Let's get you out of this room." He guided her away from the staring eyes, past the table of ruined food and shattered glass, and down the quiet hallway to the private office she had never seen. Mr. Henderson followed, closing the heavy oak door behind them, sealing them off from the world that had just been set on fire. The heavy oak door of the office clicked shut, and the chaotic symphony of the dining room, the murmuring diners, the clinking of cutlery, the distant, frantic energy, was gone, replaced by a thick, muffling silence. The office was nothing like the opulent, velvet-draped restaurant. It was a room of substance, lined with dark mahogany bookshelves filled with volumes on logistics, economics, and, surprisingly, art history. A large, practical desk sat in the center, and a wall of windows overlooked a quiet, private garden hidden from the street. Xavier was trembling, the adrenaline of the confrontation draining away, leaving her suddenly, painfully aware of the cold, sticky wine soaking her blouse and the stinging in her eyes. "Please," Marcus said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. He gestured to a deep, black leather armchair. Xavier sank into it, her legs feeling as if they'd been replaced by water. Mr. Henderson, his granite-faced composure back in place, but his eyes kind, moved silently to a concealed cabinet. He opened it, revealing a small refrigerator, and retrieved a cold bottle of still water. He opened it and handed it to her, along with a thick, monogrammed hand towel from an adjacent shelf. "Here, Miss Vance, drink this. And for your face." "Call her Xavier, Henderson," Marcus said quietly. He had shed his suit jacket, tossing it onto the back of his desk chair. He ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair, looking less like a titan of industry and more like a man who had just survived a shipwreck. "Xavier," Henderson corrected himself, offering her a small, supportive smile. Xavier's hands were shaking so much she could barely hold the bottle. She ignored it, her gaze fixed on the worn, creased photograph in her other hand. Her mother, Amelia Vance, vibrant and young, smiling at a man Xavier had never known. You really knew her, Xavier whispered. It wasn't a question, but a statement of disbelief. She's so young here. She was 22, Marcus said, his voice thick with memory. He didn't sit, but rather leaned against the desk, as if afraid to get too close. She was everything. She was painting a mural on a brick wall in the worst part of the city. I was trying to get a loan for my first cargo container. I had grease on my hands, and I told her she'd missed a spot. A tiny wet laugh escaped Xavier. She threw her brush at you. Marcus's head snapped up, his eyes wide. How did you know? She told me that story, Xavier whispered, a tear tracing a clean path through the wine staining her cheek. She always said it was about an arrogant man who thought he knew more about art than the artist. She never told me it was you. She never told me, her voice broke, that he was my father. The word hung in the air, heavy and strange. She had no reason to, Marcus said, his face contorting with a deep, ancient guilt. I left. I was the arrogant man. I was a fool. He walked to his desk and picked up a simple, silver frame Xavier hadn't noticed. He turned it around. It was another photo of Amelia, this one a candid shot, her hair in a messy bun, a smudge of blue paint on her nose. I told her to come with me. I'd just secured a massive contract in Asia. I was going to be rich. I painted this picture of a grand life, of luxury, of seeing the world. He shook his head, the self-loathing clear in his voice. And she just smiled and said, "But Marcus, my world is right here. My art, my light." I told her it was a small-minded dream. I told her she was choosing poverty. I was cruel, and I left. I built my empire, and the whole time, I was the one who was poor. He explained it all, the discovery of his old storage unit, the box of letters returned, again and again, stamped, "Return to sender." She tried to tell me, he said, his voice cracking. She wrote for months. The last letter, it just said, "I'm going to have a daughter. Her name is Xavier. I will love her enough for the both of us." By the time I found them, 25 years had passed. 25 years. 8 months ago, Xavier clarified, her mind working, piecing it all together. "You've known for 8 months." Yes. He met her gaze, his own full of shame. "My investigators found you in 6 weeks. They found you here, at Aurelia. A coincidence that felt like the universe was laughing at me. You were right under my nose." The realization hit Xavier like a physical blow. My interview with Mr. Henderson, I wasn't qualified, not really. Chloe had more experience. "That," Mr. Henderson spoke up, stepping forward slightly, "is not entirely true. You were a different kind of qualified." Xavier looked at him, confused. "Mr. Covington tasked me with finding you, Xavier," Henderson explained, his tone professional but gentle. "But once we found you, his orders were simple. Watch over her. Don't interfere unless she's in danger. I need to know who she is. I hired you, and I have been sending him weekly reports on your progress." Xavier felt a flush of violation. You were spying on me." "I was documenting you," Henderson said, his gaze steady. "I documented the night you calmed Chef Antoine when a gas line broke and the kitchen was in chaos. I documented you staying 2 hours after your shift to help Angel, the new bus boy, learn the wine pairings. I documented you spotting a counterfeit $100 bill from across the room. And yes, I documented every time Chloe accidentally deleted your tables from the system and you handled it without a single complaint." Marcus cut in, his voice desperate. I didn't want to just show up. What right did I have to walk into your life, a life you had built, a life your mother had given you, a life you were fighting so hard to maintain, and detonate it? I just wanted to see you. He looked at her, his eyes pleading. And I saw you. I saw you work double shifts. I saw you leave here and go to the library to tutor calculus. I saw you paying off medical debt, piece by piece. I learned about Lily. Xavier stiffened. Don't. My sister. That's my responsibility. She's my niece, Marcus said simply, and her surgery is paid for. It was paid for a week ago by an anonymous hospital donor. The best orthopedic surgeon in the country, Dr. Aris Thorne, is flying in to perform it. That's not a gift, Xavier. That's a debt. My debt. A small down payment on the time I stole from your mother. Xavier finally broke. She put her face in the towel and sobbed. It wasn't a cry of sadness or even humiliation. It was a release. It was the sound of 24 years of crushing, relentless weight. The rent, the bills, the tuition, the terror of Lily's next medical emergency, evaporating into the air of this quiet, safe room. The fear that had been her constant companion was just gone. Marcus and Henderson stood in silence, giving her the dignity of the moment. After a long minute, Xavier wiped her face. She looked at the towel, now stained with wine and tears, and set it on the table. She took a deep, shuddering breath and looked at the man who was her father. "So," she said, her voice raw but steady, "what happens now?" Marcus let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for months. He walked back to his desk, no longer kneeling, and faced her as an equal. "Now, you have a choice your mother never had, because I was too blind to give it to her." He steepled his fingers. "Option 1, you walk out that door. Your car, is waiting. It will take you to a penthouse apartment on the park that I've had held for you for 2 months. Your name is on the deed. In a private bank account, there is, well, let's call it a back payment. It's enough that you and Lily will never have to worry about money again for the rest of your lives. You can travel. You can go back to school. You can paint like she did. You never have to see me again, if that's what you want. You can finally just rest. God knows you've earned it." Xavier's mind reeled. It was an escape, a golden parachute out of the life she had been fighting, a life of soft beds and no alarms and what? And option 2? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Marcus's expression changed, a flicker of something, a spark, entered his eyes. Option 2. You stay. This, he gestured around the office. All of this. Aurelia, it's just one piece. I've spent 30 years building an empire, Xavier, a logistics and hospitality empire, and I've been doing it alone. It's all hollow. Serafina. She was a symptom of the hollowness. I built a kingdom, but I have no heir. I have no family. I have you. He leaned forward. I'm offering you a job, but it's not just a job. It's a chance for me to teach you everything I know, to give you the keys. Henderson is retiring next month. I want you to be the new general manager of Aurelia. I want you to run this place. And, if you want it, I want to teach you how to run the rest. He paused, his voice dropping. I don't want you to rest, Xavier. I want you to reign. I think you were born for it. Xavier was silent. She looked at her hands, still red and chapped from the service, stained with Serafina's wine. She could have that penthouse. She could sleep for a week. She and Lily could be safe. But then she thought of her mother. Her mother created. She fought for her art. She thought of the thrill she got, not from serving, but from solving, from a perfectly executed dinner rush, from a de-escalated conflict, from a balanced ledger. She realized with a startling jolt that she didn't want to rest. She'd been in a battle her whole life. The idea of peace was boring. "I've been fighting my whole life," Xavier said, her voice finding a new, hard strength. "I don't think I know how to stop." A slow, profound smile spread across Marcus Covington's face. It transformed him. "I don't want you to stop fighting," he said. "I just want you to start winning." Xavier stood up. The waitress was gone. In her place was someone new, someone who fit the authority of the office perfectly. "If I stay," she said, her voice firm, "I have terms." Marcus's smile widened. "I would expect nothing less. Anything." "You said this is a kingdom," Xavier said. "A kingdom needs to be clean." "Chloe, the hostess." Marcus nodded, his expression turning serious. "Go on." "She's not just ambitious. She's toxic. She enjoys the discomfort of others. She sabotages her own team for her own gain. She's a smaller, cheaper version of Serafina. She's a poison in the system. As long as she's here, this isn't a team. It's a snake pit. She has to go. Tonight." Marcus didn't hesitate. He looked at Mr. Henderson. "Henderson, your thoughts?" Henderson looked at Xavier with undisguised admiration. "I have been documenting Ms. Ryan's infractions for 6 months, sir. I was merely waiting for your authorization. Xavier is correct. She's a liability." "You don't have my authorization," Marcus said, his gaze locked on Xavier. "You have hers. She's the new general manager. Her word is final." He nodded to his daughter. "Ms. Vance, what's the order?" "Mr. Henderson," Xavier said, her voice clear and carrying. "Please have security escort Ms. Ryan from the building. Have her final check drawn up for tomorrow. She is not to be permitted on the premises again." A broad, genuine smile broke across Henderson's face. "Yes, ma'am." "With pleasure." He gave a crisp nod and exited the office, closing the door firmly behind him. The silence that returned was different. It was charged, electric. It was the silence of a new beginning. "So," Marcus said, his voice hesitant, almost shy. What now, boss?" A shaky laugh bubbled up in Xavier's chest. "What now?" she said, "is I desperately need a shower, and a change of clothes, and I need to see Lily. I need to tell her. I don't even know what I'm going to tell her." "We'll tell her together," Marcus said, the word "we" hanging in the air, full of promise. "My car is waiting. But first." He walked to a sleek, glass-fronted wine refrigerator built into the wall, a model far superior to the one in the main cellar. He entered a code, and it hissed open. He retrieved a bottle, a 1998 Chateau Margaux. "I believe," Marcus said, a twinkle of mischief in his eyes, "you are owed one of these. The good one, uncorked. And my apologies. Not in your face." Xavier looked at the absurdly expensive bottle, then at the man holding it. A genuine smile, her first of the night, touched her lips. "I'll take it," she said. "But I have a better idea." She nodded toward the door. "Leave it here. We'll drink it tomorrow, after my first all-staff meeting. 10 a.m. sharp." Marcus stared at her, the bottle in his hand. Then he threw his head back and laughed, a real, rich laugh full of relief and a sudden, fierce pride. She wasn't taking a trophy. She was scheduling a meeting. She was his daughter. 10 a.m. sharp, he agreed, placing the bottle on his desk like a centerpiece. He held out his arm, a formal, respectful gesture. Xavier Vance. It is a profound and deep honor to finally meet you. Xavier looked at his outstretched arm. She looked at his face, the face of her father, a stranger, her new boss. Then she ignored the arm, stepped inside his personal space, and gave him a brief, stiff, but very real hug, burying her wine-stained face in his expensive shirt for just a second. It's a lot, she whispered. Be patient with me. He returned the hug, his strong arms closing around her, a gesture of protection he had been waiting 25 years to make. All the time in the world, Xavier, he whispered back, his eyes closing. I've got all the time in the world. And so, Xavier Vance walked out of Aurelia's front door, not as a disgraced waitress, but as its new commander. She left behind the wreckage of Seraphina Covington, a woman who learned too late that a person's worth isn't in their bank account or their brand names, but in their character. Xavier stepped into her father's waiting car, not knowing what the future held, but knowing that for the first time in her life, she wasn't just a star. She was the center of a whole new universe. What did you think of Seraphina's takedown? Was it the justice Xavier deserved? We read every single one of your comments and love hearing your thoughts. So let us know what your favorite part of the story was below. If you enjoyed this story of drama and unexpected twists, please hit that like button. Share it with a friend who loves a good revenge story. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel. We have new stories coming out every week, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Thank you for watching.